To be honest, tune in. Is this the podcast or not? To be honest, sit down, we need to have a talk. Cornelius gon' make a point that the others don't. Them other shows sound the same, come escape the box. Expand your mind, dig into no controversial topics. He ain't scared to keep it real. Tune into this podcast, but don't be in your feelings. We gon' have a laugh, we gon' talk about some pain. Let's talk about the present situation of today. Yeah. To be honest, is this the podcast? I need to tune in right now.
Hey, to be honest, family, yo, this is your boy Cornelius Lindsay, and as you all probably should know, I don't know if I shared it with y'all yet, but I am actually working on my next book, and one of the chapters in it, I don't know if I'm going to call the chapter this. I guess my editor and my publisher is going to let me know if they're going to allow me to do it. But one of the chapters that I'm writing about is coming off of a sermon that I preached, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And the title of the sermon was Rename the Baby. And it comes out of Genesis chapter 35, is dealing with Jacob and Rachel. Jacob and Rachel. Now, I don't know if you know the story of Jacob and Esau, but Isaac, the father. So a lot of people know, when you know a little Bible, you usually know about Isaac. And then you have, Isaac had 2 sons. He had Jacob and he had Esau. And Esau was more of the hunter. He was really hairy. Jacob was more shrewd. Jacob was the favorite of the mother. But Esau was the favorite of his father, Isaac. Esau was born earlier. Jacob actually means heel. Not only that he was a little bit more shrewd than Esau, but he also came on the heel of Esau. He came second. So Esau was the firstborn. So in traditional Jewish custom, the firstborn is the one who receives the blessing. Well, Jacob ultimately, he tricked his dad. He put on something that gave the illusion that he was hairy like Esau, and Isaac ended up giving the blessing to Jacob. And now now time has passed. Jacob has now worked to get this woman by the name of Rachel from her father. But anyway, I take you up to this point now. Jacob is now with the woman that he has worked 14 years to get. 14 years to get. And in Genesis chapter 35, verse 16, it says, leaving Bethel, Jacob and his clan moved on towards Ephraim. It says, but Rachel went into labor while they were still some distance away. Her labor pains were intense. After a very hard delivery, the midwife finally exclaimed, don't be afraid. You have another son. Rachel was about to die, but with her last breath, she named the baby Benoni, which means son of my sorrow. The baby's father, however, called him Benjamin, which means son of my right hand. So Rachel died and was buried in what we now know as Bethlehem. Jacob set up a stone monument over Rachel's grave, and it can be seen there to this day. That's a very sad but yet joyous occasion. Rachel wanted a child. She wanted a child so much so that she cried out to God to give her a child. And now she's getting ready to have this child. They're on a journey, and I mean, there's so much symbolism to this, to Jesus Christ, because they're on their way, and she died there on the way towards Bethlehem. There's so much symbolism in it. You'd have to get the whole sermon to get everything in it. It's just chock full of so much good stuff. But specifically, the specific point that I'm pointing out here is the fact that she had a child, and when the boy came out, in her sorrow and with her last breath, she named the child Benoni, which means son of my sorrow. But Jacob comes down off the horse. He comes to the back where his wife is, who has just finished labor. She is on her deathbed, preparing to die, to draw her last breath. And in his sadness, he chooses not to name his son after his situation. Rather, he calls his son by his son's future. He says, I will not name my son after the sorrow, even though Rachel named him Benoni, son of my sorrow. The mom named the son after her sorrow, but the father came along and renamed the baby and named the child after his strength. Now you shall be called Benjamin, which is son of my right hand. And now we know the tribe of Benjamin. I won't get into all that. But nevertheless, this is a very significant portion of scripture. It's so easy. First couple of times I read through the Bible, you just kind of skim right over like, oh, she had a child. Dang, she died. Dang. I mean, when you read the Bible, you were like, God, like a lot just kind of happened all at once. She had a child. She could call him sorrowful. Why she not name him out sorrow? She couldn't name something happy. I mean, she just had a child. She wanted a child. But you look at all that stuff. But when you have to be very careful, because the word of God itself is just living. It's living, is breathing, is moving. And there, I never forget when I was reading that passage, and it stuck out so much because it was like, hold up, Cornelius, look at just what I mean. You really have to pay attention to what happened here. This woman had a child, and she named this child after her sorrow. And the Holy Spirit started dealing with me, and it's like, hold on. Now I start thinking about all of the different things in my life that I named after my sorrow. That I gave it a name, and the name that I gave it was based on the situation or the circumstance I found myself in at the time. When Jacob comes along and Jacob says, no, we're not going to name this baby after our situation. We won't name it after our sorrow, even though this is a situation that is filled with sorrow. Not only did Jacob lose the woman that he worked he worked to gain. Not only did he lose her, he was gaining a son, but he was gaining a son without a mother. This was a very sorrowful situation. But Jacob says, I won't name my son after my situation. Rather, I will name my son after his strength. I will let him be born from a place of strength. But specifically in my book, one of the things that I'm writing about is victimhood. Victimization, being the victim, playing the victim, which is something that, throughout my life, I have done a lot of. Just kind of studying it myself and looking at it. I've done a lot of that. Most specifically, there was a time period where, I was very, 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 what is the word? Judgmental, towards my father. And it's easy for you to be judgmental towards someone when you've never really walked in their shoes. Like, it's easy for a child to judge a parent when the child has never been a parent. It's the same way, like, it's very easy for me to criticize the president of the United States of America, no matter what party he's from, no matter what situation he comes from. It's very easy for you to judge a situation that you yourself have never walked into. But nevertheless, I was very, very judgmental towards my father. And I thought, maybe if he had done this, and maybe if he had done more of this, and maybe if he had said this when I was younger, and maybe if he had done this, and maybe if he had done that, then maybe I would be better, and maybe I would be this, and maybe I would be all these things, and maybe if he would have done this, and maybe if he would have bought me this, and maybe, but maybe, baby, you just trying to play the victim role. Because the attention that you get from playing the victim is oftentimes so alluring that you never want to let it go. So I would tell people, I was like, well, this was my father, and I wish I had this with him, and I wish this would have happened. I wish that I would always gloss over the fact. People would always ask me, say, "Sure, is your father still alive?" Yeah. Is he still married to your mother? Yes. Are they still together? Yeah. And then people look at me like, so what the heck are you talking about, bruh? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I wish you would have done this, and I wish we'd have done that, and I wish, and I wish, and I wish, and I wish. And there was a couple of years ago, I was talking to my mom, and we're standing in the kitchen, and my mom, I told her, I said, remember you came to all of my games? And she was like, yeah, baby, I came to your games. And I said, I really do wish that Dad would have come. And she said, well, baby, she said, your dad was working. I said, well, there were some times where, we would get home from the game and he would be at home. And she looked at me and she said, well, baby, did you ever ask him to come? And I thought, no. I never asked him to come. I didn't invite him. I didn't invite him to my games. I didn't invite my dad to my games. I didn't invite my dad to my awards nights. I didn't invite my dad, but I didn't invite my dad to, you know, my club nights, you know, for extracurricular activities. I didn't invite my dad to any of that stuff. I just assumed that since I had told my mom, that if I told my mom, then ultimately she would tell my dad. And when she told my dad, then my dad would just show up, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Like, you're just going to show up and you're supposed to be there because mom's there, and, you know, mom's in the stands, and why aren't you there? And I look out, you know, over the stands, and I would see all these moms. And years later, it made me look back and think, well, were the dads absent because the sons just didn't tell them? Because the assumption was that the moms were so involved that the moms would just tell the dads, hey, your son has a game tonight. And it's like, you know, that's cool. But now as a father, which I've become a lot more graceful towards my father, because I just realized, hey, when you have kids, like, as parents, like some of y'all millennial parents, y'all can understand like I do. Like, we trying to raise them, and we still trying to raise ourselves. You know what I'm talking about? We trying to help them with their trauma. We trying to deal with our own trauma. But I looked at that and I said, you know what? I never invited him. And as a father now, I look at different situations where, you know, my children may have games or something like that. And I think to myself, like, well, I didn't know. Well, my wife probably told me, but I didn't really want to hear from my wife. I wish my kid would have told me, because he or she thought enough to tell my wife. Why didn't they come and tell me? So now I'm in my feelings, and I'm like, well, I don't want to go to your stupid little game. I don't care. I don't care if you score or not. But I'm like, well, no, you need to go. you need to be there because that's your kid. You know what I mean? But anyway, I would always tell the story. Before I had that aha moment, that revelatory moment in the kitchen with my mom. I would always tell the story where I ended the story as the victim. If only my dad would have done this, then boom. If only he would have done, boom. If he would have showed up to the games, then boom. If this would have happened, then boom. I always ended the story with me being the victim. And the issue with that is, with me being the victim, I never grow. And I never, it's a couple of things I don't do. Number one, I don't bear personal responsibility for myself and for my own growth, because my father has, I mean, although, you know, the Bible tells us that as parents, we come in to raise our children. We instill in them the values, the Christian values, so that when they're older, they won't depart from it, all those different things. But yet and still, no matter what my mom or dad instilled in me, it is still my responsibility to grow. My growth is not indicative of them. That's the same reason why, you know, there's a story where there are two twin boys, and two twin boys. They have a father who's addicted to drugs, and one son goes and he's addicted to drugs. Another son becomes, you know, a very successful businessman, and people wondering, well, what happened? Well, one son took personal responsibility for his life. And he said, although this is the lot that I was given, I'm not going to go down that path. Each son had a path in which they could choose to take. One son chose to be a victim, and one son chose to be a victor. So it doesn't matter it doesn't matter like what happened to you in your lot in life, but it does matter how you choose to respond to it. Now, let me be very, very clear in saying this. I am not telling you to change the story. I am not telling you to change the story, because what happened to you happened to you. Like, you know, for those individuals, you're like, well, you don't understand, Cornelius, because maybe I was molested, or maybe I was raped, or maybe I was abused, or maybe I was something else. I am not telling you to change your story. In this situation with Jacob and Rachel, they didn't throw the baby out and get a new baby. But what they did do is they renamed the baby. They didn't change the baby. They just renamed the baby. And in this situation, what I'm saying to you, I'm not telling you to change your story, but what I am telling you to do is change how you tell your story. Because how you tell your story is ultimately, listen to me carefully, How you tell your story is ultimately how you're going to live out your story. If you are always telling the story in the sense that you are the victim, well, this is what happened to me, and this is what happened to me. Because here's the thing, things happen to us all the freaking time. We're going to always, in some type of way, be a victim. But if we continue to walk around with a victim mentality, then we're going to always carry the back end of the road because we're never going to truly grow. Why? Because we never end the story with strength. You could tell the same story. You know what? I was abused. I was this. I was that. I was all those things. But I'm going to tell you something. I got stronger. I got better. I got this. I changed my life around. I did this. I did that. How I tell my story, it matters. Yes, that's what happened to me. And that was a weak point in my life. But let me tell you how I got strength out of it. I can still tell my story. I can tell it accurately based on what I know. Because here's another thing about stories. Stories are usually biased. Because if I ask my dad the same story, he's going to be like, boy, I had to work, which is true. Like I look at my son, my son has games on Sundays. His soccer games are on Sundays. I'm like, dude, on Sundays, like I'm a preacher. I'm a pastor. That's like, uno numero work day for me. You know what I mean? So Sundays, it's like, well, I travel. And when I travel to go preach at different churches, like, unfortunately, Sundays are the days they want me. Sundays are during the week. And so it's like, well, I can't be at every game, but I can be at some games. Why? Because daddy needs to go. Like daddy's called. This is what daddy's responsibility is. This is the commission that God has given to daddy. So daddy has to go. So daddy can't be at every game. Daddy wants to be at every game. Daddy wants to cheer you on at every game, but I can't be there at every game. But I can be there for the special ones. I can be there for the special moments. And for the moments that I am there, I can make sure they are special. So I'm quite confident that my dad would have a different story. If you ask my son about my firstborn right now, if you ask him to give a story of me, I guarantee you his story will be different than mine. And how we tell our story, it matters. So I don't know how you've been telling your story. Maybe it's your story about your parents. Maybe it's your story about college. Well, nobody wanted to help me, and nobody wanted to give me this, and nobody wanted to do that, and everybody else got financial aid but me. And I feel like the people were racist, and I feel like they did this. I feel like they did that. Here's the thing. I'm not telling you to change your story. Listen, I was born in Newton, Mississippi. I mean, Mississippi and Alabama, our states are facing each other, the states' backs are to one another because, I mean, hey, it's like Mississippi and Alabama is the ground zero of racism. It's like, I mean, what kind of racism you want is just right there, Mississippi and Alabama. But nonetheless, I was born in Mississippi. I've seen the Ku Klux Klan up close. I've seen the Grand Wizard. I never had to guess what they look like. I never had to guess what the robes look like. When I was growing up in school, I was in elementary school, and it was a teacher, Miss Johnston. I don't mind saying her name. Miss Johnston sat all the black kids in the back. But when I walked into the classroom, I was just real bold. So I sat in the front. So Anna Lee May had to sit in the back. I never forget, Miss Johnston came up to my desk and she said, excuse me. She said, can you go back and sit in the back? She said, Anna Lee May is supposed to sit up here. And I said, I don't want to sit in the back. I want to sit in the front. I want to sit on the front seat. And she was like, I need for you to get up right now and go to the back. I remember that broke me. I was crying. I was outside in the hallway crying. Never forget my sister, who was like 3 years older than I am. She was walking in the hallway with her friend, and Miss Johnston was outside trying to console me, saying, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's just a seat. My sister walked by. She's like, why my brother crying? Why my brother crying? He better not be crying when I'm like, sis, calm down. But nevertheless, my mom came up there, figured it all out. I ended up sitting in the front, and then we figured out, why she was putting all the kids in the back, because we were black. And she figured all the white kids need to be up front. And her thinking, this is in the 90s, her thinking was that the white kids needed to be up front because the white kids needed to hear what she was saying. I guess the black kids had to be in the back because the black kids didn't need to hear what she was saying. How crazy, how racist do you have to be? I've seen it with my own eyes. So again, I'm not telling you to change your stories, but I am telling you to change how you tell it. For instance, in that situation with Miss Johnston, she put me in the back. She wanted me to be in the back. I cried my eyes out. Ultimately, my mom came up there, got Miss Johnston together, got the principal together, and I sat back in the front. I was proud to sit in that front seat. And from that moment forward, I never wanted to sit in the back again because my mom explained to me then exactly what happened. She explained to me why she wanted to put me in the back. And then I realized it clicked in my head why I should always be in the front. Now, if I stop the story at, yeah, my teacher was racist and she wanted to put me in the back. She was just racist, and that's how racist people are. That's just how white people just racist. And if I stop my story there, I'm just a victim. I'm just a victim. And I don't want to end my story in my sorrow. I want to end my story in my strength. I'm going to rename the baby. I'm going to rename my story. I'm going to retell my story. And although I'm not changing my story, I'm changing how I tell my story. Well, I cannot wait to get this book into your hands. I cannot wait to get this book into your hands. I guarantee it's going to be a blessing to you. This chapter already is being a blessing to me, but this whole idea of victim mentality, all that kind of stuff, is something that we have to talk about more and more and more. But it's gonna be heavy in my book, so I cannot wait to get it to you. Y'all, you know what? I love y'all so much. God bless y'all. Introduces. I'm out. Make sure y'all share this with a family, with a friend. Share it with somebody who always want to play the victim. Be like, yo, I got something I want you to listen to, player. That's it. About 20 minutes. I just want you to listen to it. I just want you to listen to it. Yo, I love y'all so much. Make sure y'all subscribe, like, comment, all those different things, man. I love y'all so much. Write a review, all that kind of stuff. You know, all that stuff. It matters to the people. To the people out there. The people out there want to know. So you make sure you do that. God bless y'all so much. Introduces. I'm out.